I'm Aaron Rutten, and this is a demonstration of the ink brush pack I created for Procreate. You can download these brushes from my website at aaronrutten.com. This is a collection of brushes that will give you various inking effects. You can do lettering, line art, hatching, stippling, you can color with markers, and much more. The first brush I'd like to demonstrate is called Tapered Ink. If you're working in a line art style, you might really like this brush. It creates sharp tapered points quite easily, and it also has some stabilization or smoothing. So as you can see, it works really well for inking artwork like this. Lighter pressure will give me a thinner line. Heavier pressure will give me a bolder line. This way I can get a lot of variety in my strokes. You can also use it for hatching. Put in some detail on the feathers here. The next brush is Circle Brush. This is a very useful brush because if you want to paint a circle, all you have to do is make it the size you want it and tap once. You've got a perfect circle. You don't have to draw any special shapes. You don't have to worry about freehand drawing it. You can also use it in the eraser mode. I'll make my brush smaller, and I can use it to make decorative effects like this. Or if I want to create a moon, I can make my brush larger, and then I can cut away at it like that. And you can, of course, use other colors besides black as well. Let's see what Halftone Pen can do. I'll zoom into the beak of this crow here. And if I paint with this brush, you can see I get a great halftone effect. This is an effect you might see in vintage print. And it really easily gives you the effect of shading without having to change your color. Light pressure will give you a thinner line. Heavier pressure will give you a thicker line. And you can continue to build up these strokes, but the pattern will remain static. All that will really happen is those dots will get a bit bolder. If I zoom out, you can see it creates a bit of shading. I'll demonstrate with the ink brush next. This brush has a flat dab, which is linked to the barrel rotation or tilt of your pen. In this case, I'm using the Apple Pencil Pro, so it's linked to barrel rotation. So if I want to, I can get a wider line like this, or I can rotate it and get a thinner line, or everything in between if I want sort of a calligraphy effect. As you can see, this brush is bristly. You'll see those bristles the most when you use lighter pressure. You can taper your strokes to get the bristles on the ends. I can make my brush larger, and those bristle features will be larger. Or if I make my brush smaller, those features will be smaller. Ink hatching is next. If I make a stroke with this brush, you can see it has all these little hatching details. This is another brush that I can rotate using barrel rotation or tilt. And I recommend that you constantly rotate the barrel of your pen if you want a cross-hatching effect. I'll zoom into that so you can see exactly what it's doing. This creates a lot of detail so you don't have to draw it by hand. To use it in the context of some artwork, I'll put it right here on this branch. You can see it gives it a lot of texture without having to use a color other than black. The next brush we'll have a look at is called Lettering Pen. This brush is great for lettering. For example, I'll just do some handwritten text here. This brush has smoothing applied, but it's just the right amount, at least for me, where I can get really great lettering. So I can get these sharp angles, but everything is still smoothed out. Now, of course, I'm being kind of quick and sloppy about this. You could take your time or do several iterations of this to get it looking more clean, but that gives you an idea of what this brush can do. If you're doing lettering that's less angular and more rounded, then you'll want to use Lettering Pen Rounded. Here's an example of how that might look. Let's see what Line Brush can do. There is the Quick Shape mode if you want to draw straight lines. I just tap and hold, and I can angle my line and change the length of it. But what if you don't want to use Quick Shape mode? You just want to freehand draw straight lines. That's where the line brush comes in. It's very smoothed out, and I can even get curves if I go slow enough. As you can see, I can draw three-dimensional shapes like this. And then, of course, you can get the best of both worlds, where I could add another layer. And then if I want more precision, then I can use Quick Shape mode to draw the lines more precisely. Let's give Marker Alcohol a try. This is a brush you can use for coloring, so I'll choose a color. As you can see, the dab is flat and I can rotate it using barrel rotation. What I'm doing here is I'm coloring behind my outline layer. Because this is a marker brush, as you build up subsequent strokes, you can layer up your color like so. Lighter pressure will give me a fainter mark. Heavier pressure will give me a more bold mark. Alcohol-based markers can be easily blended, so that's kind of the effect you're going for with this brush. Being pretty quick and sloppy here just so you can see how this brush works. If I want to blend in other colors, I can do that. We'll just use heavier pressure on the bottom and lighter pressure as I move up toward the top. Let's do some of that over here as well. And we'll blend in another color to be something that's more analogous like this. You can see where the two colors overlap. They blend together in a very inky way. This new color doesn't cover the previous color like it would with an opaque paint. And again, I could use this in the eraser mode if I want to clean up the edges a bit. Or maybe I want to fade that color out a bit. This is almost like you're using water to remove the ink. And I can also use the smudge mode. Now I can blend colors together. Again, it's as if I'm applying a little bit of water and maybe smudging it with my finger. Marker buildup is another type of marker. I'll choose a yellowish color like this. And as its name implies, I can build up color and I get this very inky hue shift. You may notice with certain types of concentrated pigments, they start out one color when they're very diluted, but as you begin to build them up, they shift in color. You'll see this the most with certain colors. For example, this one's more aqua, but as I build it up, it starts to turn more green. Rough ink is next, and you can see if I compare the strokes, rough ink is much rougher. It has these lumpy edges. One way to use this is to create strokes like cracks that have extra character in them, so I don't have to draw that detail myself. Or if you wanted it to look like you're drawing on a rough paper with ink, where you just want your inking to look a little bit more organic, this brush works well for all of the above. Let's take Shape Brush for a spin. This is a brush that's great for creating shapes. As you can see, I can draw ellipses quite easily. The line brush tends to work better for angular shapes, but I can still get that effect here. But this brush is better suited for curves and flowing shapes, rather than polygonal shapes. Stippling is a really fun technique where you make millions and millions of dots to create an image. The stippling brush is great because it can create several dots at once, which saves you a lot of time. As you can see, I can build it up like this, and I can get sort of a gradient effect just by using more stippling in one area and less in others. If I use light pressure, I'll get a very thin line of stippling. If I use heavier pressure, the stippling will spread out more. I can also adjust the size of the brush to control the stippling features if I want those dots to be finer. If I use this on my crow illustration, you can see how I can use it to create shading. And again, I'm being very sloppy about this. You'd want to make sure to stay inside the lines. I could use a selection for that, or I could just clean it up with the eraser. I'll demonstrate with short hatching next. This is another hatching brush, but it creates bolder lines with more variation. You can control the angle of these lines using barrel roll or tilt. And I just want to keep rotating my pen like this to build up all these nice details. But as you can see, it works well to create a lot of random hatching. If you wanted your hatching to be more directional, you could do that as well. I'm just not rotating the barrel of the pen. I could create something that looks like fur. We've already looked at tapered ink, so the last brush we'll look at is called wet buildup. I'll paint on a layer beneath my line work, and if I use this to color the crow and let it spill over a bit, you can see it's like I'm painting with a wet ink. If I build it up, as its name implies, it will build up darker, just like the markers. If I use lighter pressure, I will get a thinner, more transparent ink. If I use heavy pressure, then it will be thicker and more concentrated. So as you can see, I can very easily color in my subject here. Again, I'm being very sloppy about this. And if I want to add shading without changing my color, then I just build it up like so. And again, you can mix colors together. If I want to add in some warmer color like this, you can see the ink bleeds together. There you have it. That was a demonstration of the ink brush pack I created for Procreate. Download these brushes from my website at aaronrutten.com.